There's a strange kind of silence that hangs in the air when you know something is wrong, but can't quite put your finger on it. It's the kind of silence that tightens your chest, and no matter how hard you try to ignore it, it keeps creeping up on you. That was my life for the past few weeks, a growing sense of dread that I couldn't escape, no matter how much I tried to distract myself. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't the type to snoop, to check someone's phone or read between the lines of every word spoken. I always believed in trust, in marriage, in the bond that two people share when they promise each other forever. But sometimes, life has a way of throwing you off course, making you question everything. It started with something small. It was late in the evening, a Thursday to be exact, when the letter arrived. I wasn't expecting anything in particular, but it was different from the usual pile of bills and junk mail. The envelope was crimson red, with no return address, and the paper inside was thick and almost velvety to the touch. I'm not sure what possessed me, but I opened it immediately, my curiosity getting the best of me. Inside, there was just a single sheet of paper. In elegant script, the note read, "Meet me at midnight, at the place you know well. All will be revealed." I stood there for a moment, staring at the words. The ink seemed to bleed into the paper, almost too smooth, too deliberate. There was no signature, no clue as to who sent it. Just the vague, ominous message that felt like a puzzle. The first thought that crossed my mind was how absurd it all seemed. I wasn't involved in anything that could require such secrecy. No secret admirers, no mysterious pasts, nothing. But the more I thought about it, the more the words began to gnaw at me. The place you know well. It wasn't specific, but somehow, I knew exactly what it meant. There was an old warehouse on the edge of town, abandoned for years, its windows boarded up, a place people only whispered about. I had been there once when I was younger, with friends, just to explore. But why would someone want me there now? Why me? I tried to shake it off, tried to convince myself that it was a joke, maybe a prank from one of my old acquaintances. But the feeling in the pit of my stomach told me otherwise. That's when I started to wonder if I was really as free of secrets as I thought. Could someone be playing a game with me? Or worse, were they trying to reveal something I wasn't ready to see? The next few hours passed slowly. I couldn't focus on anything. My mind kept returning to that letter. When midnight finally arrived, I knew I couldn't just ignore it. There was no logical reason to go, but something in me couldn't resist. It was like a pull, an unseen force urging me toward it. I threw on my jacket, grabbed my car keys, and drove in the direction of the warehouse. The streets were empty, the night quiet and still, as if the city itself was holding its breath. As I approached the building, the familiar rusted gates loomed in front of me, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. There was no one in sight, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching me. I parked a little distance away, staying in the shadows. I didn't want to risk anyone seeing me. As I stepped out of the car, my shoes crunching on the gravel, I felt a strange mixture of excitement and fear. I couldn't explain it, but I was drawn to the warehouse like a moth to a flame. I approached the entrance cautiously, scanning the area. Then, I saw it, a figure standing by the door. A man, his face obscured by the shadows, but his posture unmistakable. He was waiting for me. I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who are you?" I called out, but the man didn't respond. He simply stood there, like he had been expecting me all along. As I got closer, I saw that he was holding something in his hand, another envelope, this one just as red as the one I had received. He extended it toward me without a word. I took it, my fingers brushing against his, cold and clammy. "Open it," he said, his voice low and almost mechanical. I hesitated for a moment, but then I tore open the envelope. Inside, there was no letter this time, only a small, silver key. "What's this for?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. The man finally spoke again, his eyes never leaving mine. "You're about to find out." I stood there for a moment, holding the key in my hand, trying to process everything that was happening. My mind raced. What was going on? Why had I been brought here? And what was the key for? The man stepped aside, nodding toward the door. "You need to go inside. It's time to learn the truth." I looked at the door, then back at him. Something deep inside me screamed to run, but I couldn't move. I felt paralyzed, like I was part of a story I didn't fully understand. The man's gaze was piercing, almost hypnotic. "Go," he urged. I swallowed hard and stepped forward, unlocking the door with the key. The moment I turned the handle, the door creaked open, revealing a dark interior. As I crossed the threshold, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to uncover something that would change everything. I stepped into the warehouse, my heart pounding louder than my footsteps on the cold concrete floor. The air inside was thick with dust, and a damp, musty smell clung to everything. The dim light from the street lamp outside barely filtered through the cracked windows, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly across the room. My breath came in shallow gasps as I hesitated for a moment at the threshold. The man hadn't followed me inside. He stood outside, his figure disappearing into the darkness as if he'd never been there in the first place. I had no idea what I was doing here, but I knew that there was no turning back now. I looked down at the silver key in my hand. It was small, but there was something heavy about it, as though it held a weight far beyond its size. I took another step, the creak of the floor echoing in the silence. The warehouse was vast, but it felt empty, almost like a forgotten place. The walls were lined with shelves that had been abandoned, stacked with rusted metal and broken tools. The air felt thick, suffocating, and the sound of my own breathing was the only thing keeping me company. I scanned the room, looking for something, anything that might explain why I was here. My eyes landed on an old, wooden door at the far end of the warehouse. It looked out of place, like it had been there for years, untouched by time. It was slightly ajar, and something about it called to me. It was as though the door knew I was meant to open it. I moved towards it, my feet dragging across the cold floor, the key still clutched tightly in my hand. With each step, I could feel the weight of the mystery bearing down on me. Why had I received the letter? What was this place? And most importantly, what was behind that door? When I reached it, I hesitated again. My heart was racing, my hands clammy. I had no idea what I was about to walk into, but I felt a strange pull toward it. With a deep breath, I inserted the silver key into the lock, the cold metal clicking against the mechanism. The door creaked open, and I stepped inside. The room was smaller than I expected. It was dimly lit, the only light coming from a single, flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls were lined with shelves, but instead of the rusted metal and broken tools I had seen in the main warehouse, these shelves were filled with boxes. Neatly arranged, each one labeled with numbers, dates, and codes I couldn't understand. I took a few cautious steps forward, my curiosity pushing me further into the room. As I moved closer to one of the shelves, I noticed a box sitting at the edge, slightly different from the others. It was smaller, wrapped in plain brown paper, with a single red ribbon tied around it. I reached out, my fingers trembling as I untied the ribbon. The paper fell away, revealing a wooden box. It wasn't anything fancy, but there was something about it that felt important. My pulse quickened as I lifted the lid. Inside was a single photograph. I picked it up, and as soon as I saw it, my breath caught in my throat. It was a picture of Vanessa, my wife. But it wasn't just any picture. It was a picture of her, with another man. They were standing together, smiling, their arms around each other as if they were a couple. But the strangest part? The man in the photo wasn't anyone I recognized. My stomach churned, and I felt my knees go weak. This was impossible. There had to be some kind of mistake. I looked at the photo again, but there was no denying it. The man was unfamiliar, and the look on Vanessa's face was one of genuine happiness, a look I had never seen directed at me. I dropped the photo back into the box, my mind racing. How could this be? What was this photo doing here, in a place like this? And why hadn't she ever mentioned this man before? A cold sweat began to form on the back of my neck as I turned around, feeling the weight of the room closing in on me. I needed answers. But before I could take another step, I heard a voice, the same voice from earlier, echoing in the silence. "You didn't think it would be that simple, did you?" the man said. I whipped around, heart leaping in my chest. He was standing in the doorway, watching me with that same cold, distant expression. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice shaking with frustration. "Who are you? And what's going on here? Why do you have a picture of Vanessa with some random guy?" The man didn't answer right away. He just stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the shelves, his gaze lingering on the photograph in my hand. "You're asking the wrong questions," he said quietly. "The question isn't who I am. It's why you're here, why you were chosen." I felt my chest tighten as I tried to make sense of his words. "Chosen? What did he mean by that?" "You've been living a lie," the man continued, his voice cold and detached. You've spent years believing things that aren't true. But it's time you wake up. I took a step back, the reality of what he was saying sinking in. No, no, this isn't happening, I whispered to myself. The man tilted his head slightly, as if considering me. You really think it's all been normal? That everything you've believed in was real? He paused, letting the silence stretch between us, then added, It's time to see the truth, Elliot. He stepped forward, his hand reaching into his jacket. He pulled out another envelope, the same crimson red as the first one, and handed it to me. This will help you understand, he said, his voice low. I took the envelope from him, my fingers trembling. It felt like I was being handed a death sentence, something that would tear apart everything I thought I knew about the life I had built. I didn't want to open it, but something deep inside me told me I had no choice. With a shaking hand, I tore it open. Inside was another photograph, but this time, it wasn't of Vanessa. It was a picture of me, and I wasn't alone in the photo. The photo in my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, and my fingers shook as I stared down at it. It wasn't just any picture. It was a photograph of me, standing on the balcony of my own apartment, looking out at the city lights. But there was something strange about it. In the reflection of the window, I could see the outline of another person standing behind me. Their face was obscured by shadows, but the posture, the body language, was unmistakable. They were too close, standing just a little too near to me for comfort. I felt a cold shiver crawl down my spine. The person in the reflection, who was that? I didn't recognize them. It couldn't be Vanessa, and certainly not anyone I knew. There was no logical reason for anyone to be there in that moment, yet the photo was clear, detailed, as if the camera had captured a secret that had been waiting to be uncovered. I turned the photo over, desperate to find any clue, any scrap of explanation. But there was nothing. No date, no location, just a blank back. My heart was racing now. I could feel the blood rushing to my head, the room closing in around me. I had to get out of here. This was insane. This couldn't be real. But I couldn't stop myself from looking at the picture again. Why? The man, who had silently observed me the entire time, took a step forward. Do you understand now, Elliot? Do you see the truth? His voice was flat, emotionless, as though he were narrating a story rather than revealing something that could unravel my life. Who are you? I croaked, my throat dry as I clutched the photo tighter. What do you want from me? The question hung in the air, thick and heavy. I had to get some answers. My mind was a storm of confusion and fear. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked slowly over to a nearby shelf and picked up another envelope, this one larger than the first. The moment he turned back, I saw a small smile tug at the corner of his mouth, as if he were enjoying the effect his presence was having on me. You've been living a comfortable lie, Elliot. Your whole life is a carefully curated illusion. But nothing lasts forever, does it? I stepped back, trying to make sense of his words, trying to form a coherent thought. What are you talking about? I don't know you. I don't understand what this is. What's going on here? I was shouting now, my voice cracking as the weight of everything pressing down on me started to overwhelm my sense of reality. He ignored the panic in my voice, his eyes never leaving me as he calmly walked over to the small table in the corner. He laid the larger envelope in front of me and motioned for me to take it. Open it. You might want to see this. This will answer all your questions. I hesitated, but something inside me, that strange, nagging feeling, told me I had no choice. I reached for the envelope with trembling hands and slowly tore it open. Inside, there was yet another photo. My stomach churned when I saw it. This time, I wasn't alone. I was sitting at a table, in a restaurant. I recognized it immediately, with a woman. She was beautiful, with dark hair and bright eyes. She was smiling at me, but what disturbed me the most was the way I was looking at her. There was something in my eyes that I couldn't place. It wasn't just friendly or casual. It was a look I reserved for someone I was in love with. But I didn't know her. I'd never seen her before in my life. I turned the photo over, desperately searching for answers. But again, there was nothing. No clue as to who she was or why I was in a restaurant with her. The more I looked at the photo, the more I felt the ground slipping out from under me. How was this possible? Who was behind this? I looked up at the man again, my chest tight, my thoughts racing. What is this? Why are you doing this to me? Who the hell are you? My voice was shaking, raw with fear and confusion. The man remained calm, his face impassive as ever. I'm just the messenger, Elliot. I'm the one who delivers what you've been avoiding. You've been running from the truth for so long, but it's time to face it. Face what? I demanded, my frustration mounting. What truth? I don't even know who you are, what you want from me. You're not the person you think you are, he interrupted, his voice cold. None of this, your marriage, your job, your life, none of it is real. It's all an illusion created by someone you trust, someone you love. And you're about to find out just how deep the lie goes. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I staggered backward, the walls of the warehouse spinning around me. What was he saying? What did he mean? My mind raced to catch up, but nothing made sense. Could it be true? Could Vanessa have been lying to me all this time? Could everything I thought I knew about my life be some kind of cruel fabrication? I looked down at the photo again, my mind trying to piece it together. The woman in the picture, who was she? Why was I smiling at her like that? Was this another affair? Had Vanessa known about it? Was I being set up? My thoughts tangled into a web of suspicion and disbelief. I glanced up at the man, trying to steady my breath. What do you want me to do with this? I held the photo out, desperate for some kind of explanation. He didn't take the photo. Instead, he stepped closer, his gaze now piercing, almost as if he were reading my thoughts. I'm not the one who needs answers, Elliot. You are. You need to find out the truth for yourself. All the pieces are in front of you. But the question is, are you willing to face what's coming? I stared at him, my mind reeling. What was he talking about? What did he know? Who was pulling the strings here? I was about to speak when I heard the faint sound of footsteps behind me. I froze, my heart racing again. Slowly, I turned, and there, standing in the doorway of the warehouse, was Vanessa. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, as if she had just walked into a nightmare. She stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. Elliot, you don't understand. You have to listen to me. Vanessa's voice barely reached me, as if the distance between us had somehow grown too wide in the span of seconds. Her eyes, once full of warmth, now held a certain fear, a fear I had never seen in her before. The woman I had known for years, the one who had stood by my side through everything, was standing in front of me, her presence feeling like an unspoken admission of guilt. My mind raced, my pulse thundering in my ears, drowning out her whispered words. Elliot, you need to listen to me, Vanessa repeated, her voice more urgent this time. She took a step forward, but I didn't move. I couldn't. The man who had brought me to this place, the one who had been the catalyst for everything, stood in the corner of the room, silently observing. His expression hadn't changed. He was still that distant, impassive figure who seemed to exist solely to stir the pot. But the look he gave Vanessa wasn't one of surprise. It was almost like he expected her to show up. Why are you here? I managed to rasp, still clutching the photograph in my trembling hands. The image of me with that woman haunted me, like a ghost that refused to leave. Why didn't you tell me about any of this? About her? My voice broke on the last word, a mixture of anger, confusion, and hurt flooding through me. Vanessa swallowed hard, her face contorting with the weight of whatever she had been keeping from me. Elliot, please. I didn't want you to know. I was trying to protect you. Protect me. I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in the cold air. By lying to me? By keeping secrets? How is that supposed to protect me? I stepped back, feeling the walls of the warehouse pressing in, like the entire building was closing around me. I had no choice, she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I never wanted to hurt you. But you have to understand, there are things going on that you don't know. Things that go beyond you and me. Beyond everything. The man took a step toward us now, his gaze unwavering. You really think she's the one who's been keeping the secrets? His voice was cold, almost mocking. You've been living in a web of lies, Elliot. And now, you're finally starting to see it unravel. I turned my gaze back to him, my eyes narrowing. What are you talking about? What's going on here? I demanded, my mind spinning, trying to grasp any piece of reality that would make sense of the mess I was in. The man didn't respond directly. Instead, he turned to Vanessa, his expression hardening. Tell him, then. Tell him the truth. Because this is your last chance to explain. Vanessa's face paled further, her lips trembling as she looked between me and the man. She was visibly shaking now, her hands clasped tightly in front of her as though she were trying to hold herself together. Elliot, everything that's been happening, it's all been part of a plan. A plan that goes back further than you could ever imagine. And it's not just about me. It's not just about you. Her words were like a punch to my gut. A plan? What plan? I asked, stepping closer, my voice rising despite myself. What the hell are you talking about? The man stepped in then, his voice cutting through the tension. You think you're in control of your life, don't you, Elliot? You think you've made all the choices that brought you here. But everything has been orchestrated. And now you're finally at the center of it. I couldn't process what he was saying. I wanted to scream, to tell him to stop playing games, but the weight of his words hung in the air like an unshakable fog. You're insane, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, they felt weak, as though I were trying to deny something I didn't fully understand. Who the hell are you? And why the hell is Vanessa part of this? Vanessa took a step forward, her hands trembling as she reached for me. Elliot, I never wanted you involved. I never wanted you to know. But you have to know now. You have to know everything. My mind was spinning, my heart racing as I tried to make sense of her words. Know what? What am I supposed to understand, Vanessa? What's going on? Before she could respond, the man spoke again, his voice cold and unyielding. The truth is simple, Elliot. Your life has never been what you thought it was. You're a pawn in a much bigger game, one that has been played for a long time. And Vanessa? She's not the only one hiding secrets. So are you. I froze. What do you mean, so are you? My voice was barely a whisper, the words coming out slowly, as if the weight of the realization was just beginning to hit me. What do you know about me? The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took another step forward, his eyes narrowing. I know that you've been manipulated, Elliot. You've been led to believe that everything around you, your marriage, your job, your friendships, has been real. But it hasn't. It's all been engineered to keep you in the dark. Vanessa stepped in then, her eyes filled with desperation. Elliot, please. You don't understand. I was trying to protect you from this. From him. She pointed toward the man, her voice shaking. But now you have to know. You have to face it. I couldn't move. My chest was tight, my mind racing. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but everything felt like it was slipping away from me. I turned back to the man. Why me? I whispered. Why am I the one in this? Why do I matter? He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Because you were always meant to. You're the key to everything, Elliot. The question is, are you ready to unlock the truth? The room seemed to close in on me, the walls pressing against my chest as I tried to catch my breath. The photograph, the key, the messages, they were all part of something much bigger than I could have ever imagined. And I was standing right in the middle of it, with no way out. And then, just as the weight of it all started to overwhelm me, I heard something. A sound in the distance. Footsteps. Coming closer. I turned toward the doorway, heart in my throat. Was someone else about to walk into this nightmare? The footsteps grew louder, echoing in the vast warehouse like a harbinger of something far worse than I could anticipate. My heart pounded in my chest, and I instinctively took a step back, my hand gripping the nearest shelf to steady myself. I looked at Vanessa, but she was as frozen as I was. Her eyes were wide, a mixture of fear and regret painting her features. She looked like she wanted to say something, but the words weren't coming out. The man who had been watching me with his cold, unblinking gaze remained motionless, his attention drawn to the doorway. He seemed unperturbed, as if the presence of whoever was approaching was exactly what he had been waiting for. He looked at Vanessa briefly, then turned his focus back to me. This is it, he said, almost casually. The moment when everything changes. I didn't know what he meant by that, but the panic in my chest was starting to turn into something else, something colder. The sound of the footsteps continued, steady and deliberate. I could see the shadows of someone moving just outside the cracked doorway. Who is it? I whispered, my voice thick with dread. Vanessa didn't answer. Instead, she just stared at the door, her lips pressed tight. The tension in the room was unbearable, and I could feel my breath becoming shallow as the seconds ticked by. The door swung open suddenly, and a figure stepped into the dim light of the warehouse. My eyes immediately locked onto him. It was a man I had never seen before, but there was something disturbingly familiar about him. He was tall, dressed in a dark coat, his face shadowed by a black hat. But it wasn't his appearance that made my heart race. It was the look in his eyes. They were the same eyes I had seen in the photograph. The same figure standing behind me in the reflection of the window. The person I had never met, yet who seemed to be connected to every twisted turn my life had taken in the past few days. He stepped closer, his boots scraping the floor with a hollow sound. "Elliot," he said, his voice low and gravelly. The way he said my name made it feel like he'd known me for years. "It's time you knew who you really are." I couldn't speak. My mouth went dry. The man's words seemed to reverberate in the empty room, and my legs felt like they were about to give way beneath me. I wanted to scream, to run, but something inside me held me rooted to the spot. Vanessa's face had drained of color. She looked like she was going to faint, and I could see the tears threatening to spill from her eyes. She glanced at me, then quickly looked away. The man's gaze flickered to her, but he didn't acknowledge her. His focus was entirely on me. "I don't know you," I managed to choke out. "What do you want from me?" The man smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "What I want, Elliot, is for you to see the truth. The truth about your life, about the choices you've made, and the ones that were made for you." I felt like I was losing control of my mind, as if the walls of the room were collapsing around me. My head was spinning, my thoughts jumbled and fragmented. What was he talking about? Choices made for me. What truth? Was this man part of some elaborate conspiracy to ruin my life? And how was he connected to the photo, the woman, the messages? Everything felt like a twisted puzzle, and I was no closer to solving it. The man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a key, identical to the one I had been given earlier. My breath caught in my throat. It was like the key I had used to open the door to the smaller room in the warehouse. But why was he holding it now? "This is the key to everything, Elliot," he said, holding it up for me to see. "The key to your past, to the life you thought you knew. But more importantly, it's the key to the door behind you." I turned around instinctively, my gaze following his. There, in the farthest corner of the room, was another door. It hadn't been there before, or at least I hadn't noticed it. It was smaller than the one I had entered through, but there was something menacing about it, like it had been waiting for me all along. "What is that door?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's your future," the man said. "Or perhaps it's your past. The answer to everything is behind it. But whether you choose to open it, well, that's entirely up to you." I didn't know how to respond. Every word he spoke felt like a dagger, and I couldn't tell which direction was the right one to go in. But I had to know. I had to understand what this was all about. Before I could ask another question, the man stepped forward, closing the distance between us. His eyes bore into mine with a fierce intensity. "This is the last chance, Elliot," he said, his voice low and full of an urgency I hadn't heard before. "Once you open that door, there's no going back. You'll learn the truth, but you may not like what you find." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words settle in my chest. Was I ready for the truth? Was I prepared to learn everything about my life, my past, the things that had been hidden from me for so long? A part of me wanted to run, to pretend like none of this was real. But another part, something deep inside me, knew that I couldn't leave without facing what was behind that door. Vanessa, who had been silent this whole time, suddenly spoke. "Elliot, please. You don't have to do this. You don't have to know. Some things are better left in the dark." Her words hit me like a physical blow. Was she trying to protect me again? Or was she just as much a part of this twisted game as everyone else? I looked at her, my gaze cold. "You've kept so many secrets, Vanessa," I said, my voice cracking. "I can't keep pretending like everything is fine." The man chuckled, his voice dark. "Exactly. It's time to stop pretending." I turned toward the door, the one that would reveal everything. My hand trembled as I reached for the key. It was now or never. I slid the key into the lock and turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a dark passage beyond. The unknown lay ahead, and I knew there was no turning back now. The door creaked open, and a thick, musty air rushed out, filling the space between us. The passage behind it was narrow, the walls covered in old peeling paint, and the floor was littered with debris that hadn't been disturbed in years. The light from the warehouse barely reached inside, casting long shadows that seemed to writhe and pulse, as if something dark and hidden was breathing in the space beyond. I didn't want to go in. Every instinct in me screamed to turn around, to walk away from this nightmare and never look back. But as I stood there, clutching the key that had unlocked this door, something inside me whispered that I had no choice. I had come this far, And if I didn't push forward now, I might never get the answers I so desperately needed. I glanced at Vanessa, her face a mixture of fear and regret, her lips parted as if she was about to say something. But whatever words she was struggling to find, she held them back. She wasn't looking at me anymore, but at the dark hallway stretching before us. It was as if she was terrified of what lay behind it, yet knew it was inevitable. The man, still standing in the far corner, didn't move. He didn't seem to care if I stepped into the dark passage or not. He watched me with that same detached expression, as if waiting for something he knew was coming but didn't need to speak of. He was the puppet master, pulling strings, orchestrating something I couldn't yet comprehend. "Go ahead, Elliot," he said, his voice almost soothing now. "Open the door to your truth." I stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn back, to ignore whatever this man was pushing me toward. But as I looked back at Vanessa, I saw something shift in her expression. A tear slid down her cheek, and for the first time, I saw something close to guilt in her eyes. I stepped forward, my legs unsteady, every step taking me deeper into the unknown. The air grew colder the further I went. The faint noise of my footsteps echoed off the walls, amplifying the sense of isolation that was beginning to consume me. With each breath, the weight of what I was about to discover grew heavier. I turned a corner and came to an abrupt halt. The passage ended abruptly, and in front of me was another door, solid, ancient-looking, and imposing. It had no handle, no way to open it from the outside. Just a large, tarnished lock at its center, with an old iron keyhole that seemed to mock me. My heart skipped a beat. This couldn't be happening. The man had been right all along. The key had led me here. But now I had nothing. I was staring at a door, and for the first time, I felt completely powerless. "Is this it?" I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. The man had promised me answers, but now it felt like I was being led into an inescapable trap. There had to be another way. There had to be some other piece of the puzzle I was missing. I turned around, desperation creeping into my chest, only to find that the man wasn't standing in the passage anymore. He was behind me, his footsteps eerily silent as he approached. "Did you think it would be easy?" he asked, his voice low and almost sympathetic. "Did you think you could just walk in, get your answers, and walk out unchanged?" I didn't respond. I was too consumed by what lay ahead of me. The key in my hand felt heavier now, almost as if it were urging me to unlock the door. I could almost hear it whispering, beckoning me forward. With a trembling hand, I inserted the key into the lock. The metal turned with an audible click that reverberated through the stillness, sending a chill through my entire body. The door groaned open, revealing a room so dark I couldn't see anything beyond the threshold. It felt like staring into the abyss, an abyss I wasn't sure I wanted to dive into. "Are you ready?" the man asked softly, his voice almost mocking now. "The truth doesn't come without a cost, Elliot." I didn't know what that meant, but before I could voice another question, the door swung open wider, revealing a small, dimly lit room. I stepped inside. The room was smaller than I'd expected, no larger than a closet, with only a single light hanging from the ceiling. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decay. It looked abandoned, untouched for years. On the far wall, there was a small wooden table, and on it, a few items were scattered: papers, photographs, and what looked like a large, open book. But it was the thing on the table that drew my attention the most: a framed photograph. The glass was cracked, and the edges of the frame were tarnished with age, but the image inside stopped me cold. It was a picture of me. At first, I thought it was a mistake. How could it be? How could there be a picture of me in this forsaken place? But as I moved closer and peered down at the photo, my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just any picture. It was a photograph of me, but I wasn't alone. I was standing in a room I didn't recognize, my face pale, my eyes wide with fear. And beside me, standing far too close for comfort, was a man I had never seen before. His face wasn't clear in the photo, blurred almost beyond recognition, but I could see the outline of him. He was tall, with broad shoulders, dressed in dark clothing, and his hands were firmly gripping my arms, almost as if he was holding me in place. I stumbled back, my mind trying to make sense of what I was seeing. How was this possible? How could there be a photo of me like this, in a place I had never been, with someone I had never met? A soft, chilling laugh cut through the silence, and I turned to find the man standing behind me again. His expression was one of satisfaction, as though he knew exactly what I was feeling in that moment. "The pieces are coming together, Elliot," he said. "But you're still not seeing the full picture, are you? The photograph, the mysterious man, the woman in the restaurant. All of it was part of the same puzzle, a puzzle I had no hope of solving on my own." I took another step back, my mind in a whirlwind, unable to process the full weight of what was happening. The man moved closer, his presence overwhelming. "What are you running from, Elliot? The truth? Or the consequences of what you've done?" My breath caught in my throat as I realized what he meant. The truth wasn't just about Vanessa. It was about me. And now, there was no turning back. I felt the room close in on me, the walls pressing tight against my chest, suffocating me with the weight of unanswered questions. My hand trembled as I reached out to touch the photograph again. The man, the mysterious figure who had somehow been entwined in everything, stood silently beside me, watching my every move with a predatory calmness. He knew I was about to break. He knew I was teetering on the edge of something huge, something I wasn't ready to face. "This photograph," I whispered, my voice thick with disbelief. "What is it? Why is it here?" My words felt like a plea for answers, but I already knew he wouldn't give them to me easily. I had played his game up to this point, and now I was being forced to confront something far worse than I ever imagined. The man didn't respond immediately. He stepped forward, his presence growing colder as he closed the distance between us. I could feel his eyes on me, almost like he was measuring my reaction. "You want to know what it is, Elliot? You want to know what this picture means?" I nodded without thinking, the desperation in my voice cutting through the cold air. "Yes, tell me, please." His lips curled into a slight smirk, and he placed a hand on the back of the chair beside the table, almost casually. "It's a record, Elliot. A record of your past, of everything you've forgotten, or perhaps everything you've chosen to forget." I stared at him, trying to piece together his cryptic words. "What do you mean by everything I've forgotten?" "I don't remember being in that room. I don't remember that man." My voice cracked as I said it, the image in the photo becoming an anchor, dragging me further into the unknown. The man's smirk faded, and his eyes grew cold. "Not everything can be remembered, Elliot. Some things are buried deep, locked away. You don't know who you really are, do you?" I recoiled slightly, the words hitting me harder than I anticipated. "Who I am? Of course, I know who I am." He shook his head, his gaze intense. "No, you don't. Not the way you think. Your life has been orchestrated for years. This isn't an accident, Elliot. The path you've walked, the people you've met, it's all been part of a much bigger plan. And now, you're at the center of it." I felt a cold shiver run through me. "What plan? Why didn't you just tell me from the beginning?" My voice was a mixture of fear and rage, rising with each passing second. I was standing on the edge of something monumental, but I had no idea what it was. What kind of game was I caught in? And who was pulling the strings? The man smiled again, his eyes gleaming with something darker now. "I didn't need to tell you anything, Elliot. You needed to see it for yourself. You needed to uncover the truth, piece by piece. Now that you've opened the door, there's no turning back." I shook my head, trying to make sense of what he was saying. "You're telling me my life's been some kind of lie? That everything I've experienced, everything I've built, has been staged?" The words sounded absurd, like they didn't belong in my reality. The man nodded slowly. "Not staged. Orchestrated. There's a difference. And the reason you're here now is that you've reached the point where the pieces can no longer remain hidden. It's time, Elliot." I didn't know whether to scream, to run, or to collapse under the weight of it all. Everything I thought I knew about myself, my life, my relationship with Vanessa, all of it was being pulled apart at the seams. The image of the photograph lingered in my mind, the blurred figure standing behind me, holding me still. I could almost feel his presence again, as if he were watching me even now. "Who was that man?" I asked, my voice trembling. "The one in the photograph. Why was he with me? Why did I not remember?" The man stepped closer, his face only inches from mine. He spoke in a low, measured tone, his voice like ice. "You were never meant to remember him, Elliot. He was part of the past you were forced to forget. He's the key to everything, to the truth about who you really are." I recoiled instinctively, but he reached out, his hand gripping my shoulder, holding me in place. "You've spent your whole life running, hiding from what's true. But now, you have no choice. The truth is right in front of you. All you have to do is look. I was overwhelmed, my mind spinning with the implications of what he was saying. I looked at Vanessa, who had been silent through the entire exchange. She stood in the doorway, her eyes locked on the floor, avoiding my gaze. She was waiting for me to ask the questions she couldn't answer, waiting for me to realize that everything she had told me up until now had been part of a bigger deception. "What is it you've been hiding from me?" I asked her, my voice breaking. "What is all of this? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Vanessa's eyes welled with tears, and she finally looked up at me, her face filled with shame. "Elliot, I wanted to protect you. I didn't want you to get hurt. But now, I can't protect you anymore. It's too late for that." I could feel the pieces of the puzzle slipping into place, but I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to face what they were telling me. But the truth, that harsh, undeniable truth, kept clawing at me, begging to be heard. I turned back to the man, my body shaking with the enormity of what I was about to ask. "What's behind all of this? What's the endgame? What am I supposed to do with all of this knowledge?" The man's eyes glittered. "You're not supposed to do anything, Elliot. You were never meant to make the choice. You're here because they want you here. Your choices have already been made for you. The truth has always been there. But now you see it." I felt the air shift around me, the weight of his words sinking into my skin like poison. There was no escape. I was caught in a web of my own making, and the strands were tightening with every passing second. The man stepped back, his gaze never leaving me. "You'll understand soon enough," he said, his voice cold and distant now. "But be careful, Elliot. The truth has a way of changing everything. And once you see it, once you know it, you can never go back." I felt a sickening realization settle in. The man was right. There was no going back now. Everything I had built, every moment I thought I had control over, was already decided for me. I was a pawn, and I was just beginning to understand the rules of the game. The man turned and started to walk away, disappearing into the shadows of the warehouse. Vanessa didn't follow him, but she didn't move either. She stayed where she was, standing in the doorway, her shoulders slumped with defeat. I was alone with my thoughts, alone with the truth I wasn't sure I could bear. The photograph in my hand seemed to burn with a new intensity, its meaning growing heavier by the second. It wasn't just a memory. It wasn't just a glimpse of the past. It was a warning. The game had only just begun. I stood there, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The photograph still clutched tightly in my hand. The room around me shrouded in darkness, my mind racing through the countless revelations that had unfolded in the past few hours. The truth, though terrifying, had begun to take shape. The lies I had lived with, the fears that had haunted me, the relationships I thought were built on solid ground, everything was shifting. It felt like I was losing control, but deep down, a part of me knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. I looked at Vanessa, standing in the doorway, her tear-streaked face a picture of sorrow and regret. But underneath it all, there was something else, a flicker of hope. She had been hiding something, yes, but she was here, with me, when everything had come crashing down. That had to mean something, didn't it? She wasn't the enemy I had imagined. She was caught in this web too, and maybe, just maybe, we could find a way out together. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything finally lifting, just a little bit. This wasn't the end. It was a beginning. The beginning of reclaiming control over my life, of facing the truth, no matter how ugly it had been. I turned to her, locking eyes with Vanessa. "I don't know what's been going on, and I don't understand everything yet," I said, my voice steady but full of emotion. "But I know one thing for sure. We can't keep living in the dark. I can't do this alone, and I don't think you want to either. Let's face whatever comes next together." Her eyes widened, and for a split second, I saw the faintest flicker of hope in them. She stepped forward slowly, almost as if she was unsure of whether or not she had permission. But I held out my hand to her, and after a moment, she reached out, taking it. "Elliot," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen." I pulled her closer, my hand still holding hers tightly. "I know, and we'll figure it out. I don't have all the answers, but I want to find them. With you." The man, the one who had orchestrated all of this, had left. His presence still lingered in the air, but his influence seemed to evaporate the moment Vanessa and I stood together. We were no longer alone in this. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I realized something important. I wasn't defined by the lies I had been told or by the secrets that had been kept from me. I was defined by the choices I made now, in this moment. And I had a choice. I turned back to the door that had been the catalyst for all of this, the one that had promised the truth. But now, as I looked at it, I felt no fear, no overwhelming urge to know more. The truth had already been revealed, not in the photograph or in the words of the man, but in the way I felt when I reached out for Vanessa's hand. That was the truth of who I was, who we were, and what we could be if we faced the future together. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled. We don't need to know everything right now, I said, the weight in my chest easing, replaced by a growing sense of peace. We'll figure it out as we go, one step at a time. Vanessa nodded, her face slowly relaxing into a tentative smile. You're right. We don't need all the answers. We just need each other. And in that moment, everything changed. The darkness in the room no longer seemed so suffocating. The secrets that had haunted us no longer felt like chains, but like burdens we could share and carry together. I wasn't alone anymore. We weren't alone. Whatever the future held, we would face it side by side, with open eyes and hearts willing to embrace the unknown. Together, we walked out of the warehouse, the cool night air greeting us as we stepped into the open space beyond. The world felt different now. Brighter. Lighter. I didn't have all the answers, but that was okay. I had something better. The promise of a future where I was no longer bound by the past, no longer shackled by the lies that had once defined me. And as the night stretched before us, with the stars overhead and the path ahead uncertain, but full of possibility, I finally understood that the truth was never just about what had happened. It was about what we chose to do with what we knew now. And the choice was ours. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free.